all those moments will be lost in time.
Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about a case that many of you have asked me to talk about, and when I came across it myself I understood why. Woman who posed as teenage boy to abuse young girls jailed for 8 years. A British woman has been sentenced to 8 years imprisonment for pretending to be a 16-year-old boy in order to groom and sexually abuse young girls. Gemma Watts, 21, pleaded guilty to 7 charges of grooming and sexual assault in November 2019 and returned to Winchester Crown Court for sentencing Friday, according to a police statement. In this particular case, Watts targeted her young victims on social media platforms and duped them into believing they were entering into a relationship with someone whom they could trust, said Philippa Kenwright of London's Metropolitan Police Force, who was one of the lead detectives on the case. She then went on to form physical relationships in which she spun a web of lies and deceit, giving her the opportunity to commit sexual offenses, Kenwright added. Watts used the alias Jake Watton to groom young female victims on messaging apps such as Facebook, Snapchat, Yubo, and Instagram. Police said her deception was bizarre and elaborate, with Watts traveling from her home in Enfield, North London, to different parts of the country to meet her victims. I think I can speak for most of us when we say, what the fuck? As much as we've seen some weird shit, I didn't really expect 2020 to start with finding out that a 21-year-old woman would pose as a young boy in order to groom other young women via social media. But then again, new day, new disappointment, am I right? So I'm just upset that these young victims were duped like that and now will be facing God knows what kind of trauma, just overall negative feelings about themselves, about what happened. You know, some might even blame themselves, and of course they shouldn't, but you know, when things like this happen, people tend to always think, oh, how did I not know? Clearly, Gemma Watts really went out of her way to pose as a young boy. The investigation began in April 2018 when a medical professional told Hampshire police that a 14-year-old girl reported a sexual assault by her boyfriend, known as Jake Watton. Police found that Jake Watton was in fact Gemma Watts and later discovered another 2 victims, both under the age of 18, who reported being groomed and sexually assaulted by someone using that name. Watts was arrested in July 2018 following a search of her home. She admitted to grooming the girls and partially admitted to a number of assaults. She was then released on bail but continued to groom young girls, the police said. In October of 2018, Watts was found with a missing 15-year-old girl who said she had been sexually assaulted. Watts was then closely monitored under a sexual risk order to stop her reoffending, police said, before she was charged on September 12, 2019. There was, it seems to me, planning and in some way predatory behavior, said Judge Susan Evans when sentencing Watts. Their age, as you plainly knew, made it more likely that they would be sexually naive, enabling you to get away with your deception. So I find it slightly laughable that the judge was saying that it was in some way predatory. I'm sorry, in what way is this not predatory? Being predatory is trying to take advantage of someone who typically is not in the position of power. First of all, she was posing as a different age, she was posing as a different gender, and she was aiming for young girls. How is any of that somewhat or slightly predatory? That is entirely predatory. I can't think of anything that would be more predatory. So in another article on the Washington Post, they give a little bit more information. So it said that Watts was charged in September 2019 and pleaded guilty 2 months later. And then Metropolitan Police Detective Philippa Kenwright told British media outlets that the authorities believe the extent of her crimes may not yet be known, telling The Independent, "I think there will be further victims who were in a relationship with Watts who will now realize she is a woman." Defending Watts in court, Patrick Maggs said his client understood her crime was serious, The Independent reported, but he pointed to her low IQ, lack of maturity, and struggle to accept her sexuality as mitigating factors. See, now, this goes back to when people use mental illness as an entire excuse, and while mental illness is not your fault, it's your responsibility. The same way that her struggle to accept her sexuality. You can struggle, but that doesn't make you entitled to take it out on other people, to make other people victims, and then for you to be bailed out of your own responsibility because you're struggling. Because your struggle is your struggle. Don't turn it into someone else's trauma. End of. With Gemma Watts' low IQ, with her maturity, I would invite the court that represents that she almost certainly going to be trying to socialize with those who are younger than herself, he said. Whatever else it was to present as a boy was indicative of Gemma Watts' entire failing to cope with her own sexuality. I'd like to see an IQ test. I really would like to see an IQ test. Not saying that I don't believe it. I'm just saying it seemed like a lot of this, as was said prior, was premeditated. Even giving the benefit of the doubt, this still looks suspicious to say the very absolute least. And in the end, Watts still did what she did. So the reasons why, yes, I want to know why she did it, but at the same time, are you off the hook because of it? Certainly the fuck not. One 14-year-old girl said in a victim impact statement that her heart exploded when she learned the truth about Watts from police. My world stopped. I actually stopped breathing. I loved him so much, she said, according to the BBC. So in an article by Essex Live, there's actually more information that I think illuminates my points a little bit more accurately than I have myself. So, PC Nicola Benson from Hampshire Constabulary's Missing and Exploited team said, the level of manipulation and deceit used by Watts to snare her victims in this case was truly shocking. Children are particularly vulnerable to exploitation online with increased use of social media apps, and there is a real risk that any contact with a stranger online can lead to a child meeting an offender in person. This case demonstrates the stark reality of that, and it is astonishing the lengths that Watts went to ensure that she could abuse these girls. I am pleased that Watts has now received a custodial sentence, and I would like to commend the bravery of the girls and their families who found the courage to come forward and make this happen. I want them to know that they are not in any way to blame for this and hope they can now move on from this ordeal. Then, this is the part you should brace yourself for. Gemma Watts' offenses in full. Gemma Watts, 21, from Pembroke Avenue, Enfield, was sentenced to 8 years in jail on Friday, January 10th at Winchester Crown Court for the following: assault by penetration, victim 1. Sexual assault, victim 1. Meeting a child following sexual grooming, victim 1. Sexual assault, victim 2. Meeting a child following sexual grooming, victim 2. Meeting a child following sexual grooming, victim 3. Sexual assault, victim 4. Watts was also placed on the sex offenders register for life and made subject to a lifelong sexual harm prevention order. So when you see the offenses in full, I just don't know who in their right mind would think that this person should get away with it because they have their own struggles, whether it's mental with the alleged IQ or whether it's with their sexual orientation. But when you see on paper what it is they did to minors, it's astounding to me that anyone would think that these struggles in any way make any of this less terrible or make this criminal, Gemma Watts, more easily quote-unquote forgivable or redeemable, because I just don't see that whatsoever. And also, another article detailed that some of the victims were girls as young as 13. This is a 21-year-old adult going after 13-year-old girls, if not slightly older. So as much as there might be a struggle to accept their sexual orientation, their gender identity, whatever is going on, I don't really understand why they're trying to hang on to this thing of, oh, they have a low IQ, or they're immature, or they're just trying to find people their own age. Because if that really were the case, okay, so let's say they have this allegedly low IQ, they're allegedly immature. What is stopping you from befriending 18-year-olds? Even if they're maybe not at your maturity level, even if you're maybe less mature than them. Surely there are some kinds of programs that you can put yourself in where you can learn to deal with whatever you're burdened with. Surely there's another way rather than pretending to be a different gender, a different age, and getting into sexually manipulative relationships, grooming relationships. Even if everything the lawyer said is true, that doesn't really change much, does it? Does it change a lot to you? Because to me, it doesn't really change much, because all of these things are still Gemma Watts' responsibility. Is that me being harsh? You guys can let me know in the comments below if you think I'm being too harsh, but I just don't really get what they're going for here. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons, and let's get right into the fan art.